Good morning, church. Pastor Dave here with our regular Monday morning thing. And this will be part 2 of an examination of pretending. Last week I presented the possibility that pretending can be a good thing, that through pretending to be better than we presently are, we learn how to be better than we presently are. But I want to be sure to clarify one very important aspect of our pretending. Well, actually, I want to let C.S. Lewis clarify it. You're in for a treat. This morning I'm going to simply read to you from Lewis's wonderful book, Mere Christianity. I truly hope that you've already read this book. If you haven't, you should stop listening to me, turn off your computer, and go buy it and read it. I mean it. It's that good. Well, starting in chapter 7, Lewis writes, "And now we begin to see what it is that the New Testament is always talking about. It talks about Christians being born again. It talks about them putting on Christ, about Christ being formed in us, about our coming to have the mind of Christ. Put right out of your head the idea that these are only fancy ways of saying that Christians are to read what Christ said and try to carry it out, as a man may read what Plato or Marx said and try to carry it out. They mean something much more than that. They mean that a real person, Christ, here and now, in that very room where you are saying your prayers, is doing things to you. It is a living man, still as much a man as you, and still as much God as he was when he created the world, really coming and interfering with your very self, killing the old natural self in you, and replacing it with the kind of self he has. At first, only for moments, then for longer periods. Finally, if all goes well, turning you permanently into a different sort of thing, into a new little Christ, a being which in its own small way has the same kind of life as God, which shares in his power, joy, knowledge, and eternity. After the first few steps in the Christian life, we realize that everything which really needs to be done in our souls can only be done by God. And that brings us to something which has been very misleading in my language up to now. I have been talking as if it were we who did everything. In reality, of course, it is God who does everything. We, at most, allow it to be done to us. In a sense, you might even say it is God who does the pretending. The three-personal God, so to speak, sees before him, in fact, a self-centered, greedy, grumbling, rebellious human animal. But he says, let us pretend that this is not a mere creature, but our Son. It is like Christ insofar as it is a man, for he became man. Let us pretend that it is also like him in spirit. Let us treat it as if it were in fact what it is not. Let us pretend in order to make the pretense into a reality. God looks at you as if you were a little Christ. Christ stands beside you to turn you into one. I dare say this kind of a divine make-believe sounds rather strange at first, but is it so strange really? Is not that how the higher thing always raises the lower? A mother teaches her baby to talk by talking to it as if it understood long before it really does. We say, I never expected to be a saint. I only wanted to be a decent, ordinary chap. And we imagine when we say this that we are being humble. But this is the fatal mistake. Of course we never wanted and never asked to be made into the sort of creatures he is going to make us into. But the question is not what we intended ourselves to be, but what he intended us to be when he made us. We may be content to remain what we call ordinary people, but he is determined to carry out a quite different plan. The command, be ye perfect, is not idealistic gas, nor is it a command to do the impossible. He is going to make us into creatures that can obey that command. If we let him, for we can prevent him if we choose, he will make the feeblest and filthiest of us into a dazzling, radiant, immortal creature, pulsating all through with such energy and joy and wisdom and love as we cannot now imagine, a bright stainless mirror which reflects back to God perfectly though of course on a smaller scale, His own boundless power and delight and goodness. The process will be long and in parts very painful, but that is what we are in for, nothing less. He meant what He said. That's our future, my friends. We're just starting out on a journey that will end with our glorification. It won't be easy, but relax. God does all the hard part. And you will one day be what God intended for you to be. Hallelujah.